Hey everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Oregon Ducks football practice. This is the official visit podcast. I am Tyson Alger of the Oregonian. I am joined here by Andrew Greif. By the way, Andrew, I got to tell you, we are recording this in your apartment, and you have a magnificent view of Portland from here. Very, very well done. This is relaxing. And I'm sure all the podcast listeners really care a whole lot about listening to what your view looks like, but this is nice.
Thank you. When the earthquake hits, I won't have as nice a view because I'll be 100 feet lower to the ground, I think.
Well, when that story dropped, what was it? It said everything west of I-5. What are you technically?
I'm west of I-5.
Okay, so you're toast. Yeah, I'm over on that side as well. So we'll both have oceanfront property at some point. But anyway, so it's week 2 of Oregon practice. It is Tuesday. You guys will be listening to this on a Wednesday, so that means the Ducks will be 1 day removed from their first full scrimmage of practice. I guess this is kind of when the fun starts, huh?
Yeah, there were some. We haven't talked to any of the players yet today, or the coaches about how it went, but there were some early kind of stats or indications about how the scrimmage went. I saw this morning, Rob Mosley, the GoDucks.com writer, he said that Vernon Adams had thrown 3 touchdowns, Jeff Lockie 2, Dwayne Stanford caught a couple touchdowns, and that Braylon Addison had returned a couple punts for touchdowns. We don't know any situation these guys were in. I mean, Lockie's 2 touchdowns could have been, for argument's sake, 80-yarders.
Yeah.
Adams could have been from the 2-yard line, or vice versa.
But you got to know a tweet like that is going to just cause a stir because there's everyone who is in the Adams camp or is on Team Adams for this is going to be like, oh man, he's only been here 3 days and he's already throwing more touchdown passes than Lockie. It's Adams is kind of a sexy topic these days.
You kind of have to take stats like that at face value because there's no way of verifying it. You don't know, again, the context the plays happened in, what that quarterback's role in it was. There's a lot of screen passes that go a long way. There are a lot of deep balls that are more attributable to the quarterback's skill. Who knows? But I guess that's why we'll ask the players and whatnot. But this is, I think today we almost wanted to look back as much as we want to look forward to that scrimmage. We'll talk about that more as the week goes on in print at OregonLive.com/Ducks. Certainly. But we're already went through 1 week of fall camp. It's hard to believe Media Day was about 8 days ago. From your interviews, you were there at the very tail end of practices last week after Vernon Adams got to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the takeaways coaches, players led on about that for those first 5 days?
The first 5 days, I mean, anytime you talk to the coaches, a lot of that first week is spent just kind of gauging who's in shape right now. You know, there's not a whole lot of just very in-depth stuff, but they do take that pace from that very first practice. I know Helfrich was talking about, we start quick just to gas these guys because we're going to need that for our offense going on. But while you were gone those last couple of days, you had a very inconveniently timed trip that you had to take, and that Adams stuff was just, I don't know if a mess is the right word, but that was one of the weirdest days I've ever had at the Hatfield-Dowling complex on, what was that, Thursday?
Yeah. Can we just paint that picture for people who aren't working journalists, who aren't at the facility every day like we are?
Yeah, so everyone knows he's taking this test at about 12:30, right? And Adams, who just a couple days before had said he didn't want any of this attention on him and everything, he had told just about any reporter within earshot that he was taking the test at 12:30. He should be done between 1:30 or 2:30. So right around about 1:30, I had just gotten down into Eugene, and I wasn't able to check into my hotel yet. So I figured I would just go down to the complex and do some work just in case this guy pops out somewhere. So I'm the first person there. Rob Mosley, who we had just talked about, walked by me and made sure to tell me that Adams was not taking his test in the weight room. I don't need to be camped out right outside of it.
Helpful.
But then a couple more people started showing up, then a couple more, and then all of a sudden, even about an hour before practice gets out, the whole media contingent is just sitting there somehow thinking that maybe he's going to be walking through, or everyone was on their phones as well.
And this is a central plaza that has about 4 tables with umbrellas, sun umbrellas. But other than that, sun's beating down on you. I imagine everyone's trying to fight for as much shade as they can.
Yeah. So that all happens, and practice gets out. So everyone's like doing their availabilities, but still checking their phones. And then there was still no news that he had passed or didn't pass his test. So everyone was just kind of like, oh, this was a gigantic waste of time. But for me, it ended up getting kind of a little messy later on because Ducks basketball had kind of a meet and greet workout for boosters and fans. So we were down there, and I was right in the middle of interviewing Dana Altman when my phone started buzzing with the news that Adams had finally passed his test. So I was like, oh, so sorry, Dana, I got to run. So then, yeah, we wrote the story. Adams let me know that he was going to be at practice on Friday. On Friday, there was a lot more media there again as well. Adams didn't talk, but a lot of other players did talk about Adams. And from what we've gathered, me on Friday and Saturday, and you on Monday, it seems like he's making the entrance into Oregon practice pretty smoothly so far.
That's what Scott Frost said, and I kind of mentioned to him, you know, the playbook thing. People were really praising him for being able to grasp the playbook. He said Devin Allen said he knew a lot of the plays right when he came in, but the conditioning I really worried about because I watched him practice in Cheney, Washington, and he was doing everything he could, but it was by no means a college level practice. But Frost said that he's come in and he says no signs of rust condition wise, which, you know, that's positive. You don't want your quarterback sucking wind when he's trying to lead an up-tempo offense. They said he looked very sharp. They were also, everyone's going quick to mention that Jeff Lockie has looked very good in response. I think I read that some people considered Lockie's Friday and Saturday practices to be some of his best. Yeah. That would obviously overlap with when Vernon got here, maybe a little sense of urgency.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that. I mean, from what we've talked with Jeff Lockie for about the past 6-7 months is, you know, we know he's a competitor. He's a guy who's not going to let this just fall through his fingers sort of thing. But then on the other hand, what else do you think people are going to say at this point? Vernon's not going to show up and the coaches are going to come out and say Jeff had his worst practice of the year this year. But no, I mean, I believe it. I think Lockie is at least going to make this thing interesting. I don't know if Lockie's going to win this thing or when the quarterbacks are finally going to be decided. You know, it could be week 1, could be week 3. But yeah, no, I'm just glad that it's finally happening on the field instead of Vernon Watch 2015.
Yeah. Some other takeaways from that first week of practices. Wu and I spoke with Frost yesterday. He said that he was cautiously optimistic. Those are his words about what the Oregon offense could look like. I think that has as much to do with the quarterback situation. As he said, everyone is much better than they were in spring. I think I got the impression, I'm not trying to put words in coach's mouth, I got the impression during the spring that quarterbacks were not where they needed to be. There was a sense of gulp a little bit. I think that there's been a little more spirited competition. Maybe that's brought out the best in some of the guys, or at least the better. Mm-hmm. But I think it also has to do with the center play. They haven't named a center, but Frost said that, you know, the high snaps that plagued them during the spring game, that's kind of gone away. Matt Hegarty has looked pretty good there. I still think he's probably the odds-on favorite to start the transfer from Notre Dame. And then the skill position guys. You know, Charles Nelson sounds like he's pretty much full-time offense. Yeah. You have there's a bunch of guys. Ty Griffin, Malik Lovett, Kirk Merritt, let alone all the actual proven guys in the receiving core. I think that
there's been a ton of praise so far for Dwayne Stanford.
Yeah.
Junior receiver coming in. Last year was his first season back from a knee injury. A really good player last year, but it kind of sounds like he's at least separating himself as a different option for the Ducks because they have a lot of speedy guys. They have a lot of kind of those dashing, maybe slot guys, and Stanford's just a big, tall guy who can go up and get it downfield. Which, from the sounds of it, it sounds like Adams has better arm strength than Lockie does. So I think that Adams-Stanford connection could be a pretty potent one if Adams ends up winning that job, and Stanford's kind of a good deep threat there.
Yeah, defense seemed. We're talking a lot about offense. Everyone's talking a lot about offense, but defense was kind of a hot topic at the end of last week as well.
Yeah, on Friday, defensive coordinator Don Pelham, he could have gone all day talking about which guys have stood out. You know, you've heard a lot of Arian Springs, you've heard a lot of Ugo Amadi, you've heard a ton about Henry Mondu on the defensive line. Same with Tui Talia. Looks like those two guys are going to be definitely rotating in for a bunch of time on that defensive line. My favorite quote from Pelham on Friday was, "Turns out DeForest Buckner is pretty hard to block," which
you don't say.
Yeah, but I mean, just talking about a guy who's coming in here Last year, he was a little overshadowed at times coming into the season by Eric Armstead, but I mean, this is DeForest Buckner's line. This is DeForest Buckner's defense. And it sounded like he's making all the progress to be an absolute star in this conference this year.
Yeah. Quick sidebar. I'm really interested to see how Eric Armstead does in the NFL.
Yeah, me too.
Will that potential...
You think it's going to take a couple of years?
I just have no idea. If he stays healthy, which he never did at Oregon, will that dovetail into kind of obvious success? And maybe the 49ers will ask him to do more than Oregon did in that scheme. I don't know. I'm just interested to see because I don't think he left with everybody feeling like he really satisfied expectations. Unfairly or fairly, he was hurt a lot.
The NFL is such a weird sport, man, because that's the only one where someone will invest millions of dollars in a first-round draft pick just based strictly on potential. Because I don't think Armstead did anything in college that screamed I'm a first-round draft pick. But, I mean, you look at how big that guy is. How
good his feet are.
How good his feet are. And there's just some coaches that go, okay, I could turn this guy into something amazing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously those guys are a lot more versed in this than we are. If a coach thinks he can do it, I'm sure he's well within his rights. But I think that's going to be a great thing to watch for Ducks fans this year and for the next couple of years.
So you're saying the Oregonian didn't offer you a several $1 million signing bonus when you
see, the thing is they thought I was, they still thought I had growth potential. They kind of thought maybe I was going to be a 6'4", 6'5" sort of guy.
But you stayed at 5'11".
And 3/4. Yeah. Depending on what shoes I'm wearing.
Quick segue. This is a professional segue into another guy who's a little short. Ty Griffin, the new cornerback, formerly a quarterback, option quarterback. Now he's going to play cornerback at Oregon. It was his choice. He had the choice between wide receiver, corner. Wide receiver is stacked. Corner is not. He chose that way. John Neal, the secondary coach, said that he would likely play boundary corner, as in the side of the field that has less room, I guess, on the hash mark, depending on where the ball is, because that would limit how much he'd have to learn or how much
field to cover.
Yeah. But what he has going for him is extreme speed. Neal said he's the fastest quarterback he's ever seen in person, and that includes when he played Michael Vick in college when Neal was at UAB.
And for those who don't know, Michael Vick, fast dude.
Fast dude. Probably the best video game sports character in history, perhaps Michael Vick in
was that Madden
2004.
Oh my gosh. It was unfair. You could just pull the ball down and run on. I would love to get in 3rd and long situations because you can just go from shotgun, run it out wide. Not fair.
Him or Bo Jackson Tech Mobile.
Okay.
But we digress.
Actually, Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. Pretty good, but that's kind of a given because, it's named after him.
Sure.
So there was a cheat code where he could hit a home run every time he called a shot like Babe Ruth.
Wow.
Anyways, Ty Griffin.
So Ty Griffin, normally that kind of an experience, he hasn't played defense since 8th grade, and that was safety, would seem to rule a guy out from contributing so early. Neal said, not the case. You never know with this guy. He looks really good, and as a quarterback, he basically knows how to understand an entire side of the ball. So that those smarts and those feet are showing up.
I mean, it seems like they were confident that they could have done that with Charles Nelson throughout the spring and whatnot. So if it's another guy who kind of understands position and has obvious physical skills, and I mean, Ty Griffin's bigger than Charles Nelson is too, so he doesn't have that going against him. So
right,
I think he can do it.
One other guy is Tyree Robinson, the safety, sophomore safety. I remember Neal saying that he was extremely impressed with him 2 spring practices ago. Neal was really quick. You got to understand, he really praises his guys. I think he always is going to go to bat for them. But when he said Richard Sherman compares well to Tyree Robinson in terms of skills, pure movement, that was surprising.
Yeah.
I think that he likes to praise guys, but he's also not going to start a hype storm over one guy. But so that was, congratulations, Tyree. You now have the microscope on you the entire rest of the season.
If only Tyree talked like Richard Sherman too, we'd have quotes for years.
He's a pretty good talker.
He's not bad.
He tweaked a knee apparently recently. He's getting better. They don't see that as a long-term injury for him by any means. But a little bit of banged up secondary. Chris Cisse missed some time with the messed up back. Tyree Robinson had his knee. Reggie Daniels, I believe I saw him kind of walking out of a couple early practices, looked a little banged up, maybe a boot. everyone's going to get nicks and dings, but Oregon secondary can't really afford that because it's so young.
Well, I tell you what, talking with Arion Springs last week, and I know you're talking with him later today. This one confident dude. I forget what his exact quote was, but I know he had 3 interceptions during Thursday's practice, and someone was asking, "Hey, what?" Because I mean, it was the first day of Adams, so someone was like, "Hey, like who did you intercept?" Because they wanted to find out if it was Adams or Lockie. He goes, "I don't see who the quarterback saw. I just see my read, ball, touchdown," or something like that. It's like, all right, I like this guy.
Well, we're going to have more about the scrimmage, I'm sure, in the coming days. And we've heard some problems, by the way, that maybe the iTunes app, the podcast app, is having a hard time loading this. We're looking into it so you get the most updated podcast into your feed. If you don't, you can always look for this podcast at OregonLive/Ducks, where we have it every time we post into a new story.
I hear the quickest way to fix that, the date thing, is to go on iTunes and give us 5 stars.
Right. Yes. Vote us to the top of the college football podcast, please.
Yeah.
He's Tyson Alger. I'm at Andrew Greif on Twitter. He's at Tyson Alger. We're going to be back with a question and answers mailbag later in the week.
Probably about Friday.
Yes. And we hope to get some more input from you guys. Write us anytime you want. Thank you.